Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video I'll be discussing my thoughts on the 2-volume IDW Star Trek The Next Generation Doctor Who crossover, Assimilation². This was frickin' all kinds of awesome. As a fan of Star Trek The Next Generation, Doctor Who, and especially the Matt Smith era of Doctor Who, Series 5, which pretty much saw the, sort of adventures and misadventures of the Matt Smith 11th Doctor with Amy and Rory. This is well fitted in those adventures, in that time frame, and the idea of crossing into different universes, that's very much what is brought to the fore at the core of this story. The TARDIS is effectively sort of warped, out of ancient Egypt at the start of the story into the universe of Star Trek The Next Generation, and it's really compelling because there's this link between, of course, the Borg and the Cybermen, the Borg being very much sort of in their creation, you might say, an homage to the Cybermen, because there are very similar aspects to these two cybernetic beings. They basically assimilate people en masse, they remove emotion, they make sort of uniformity of this technological prowess, all these different things. It is just pitched, perfectly for these two to be, matched and to try to work in cahoots as the story would have it. But the problem is they are both power hungry. They are both about, sustaining their own culture, and those cultures create a collision in this story, the likes of which, are very much necessitating the Doctor's intervention with the help of the crew of the NCC 1701D. And you see, for the most part, the likenesses of those familiar faces, from Matt Smith to Karen Gillan, as the Doctor and Amy, respectively, from Jean-Luc Picard being very much the envisioning of Patrick Stewart, all of the characters, Riker being very much the envisioning of Jonathan Frakes, Deanna Troi, Marina Sirtis, Data, Brent Spiner, on and on and on. And it feels very much properly like the entire place setting. It feels like the equivalent of a 2-part epic Star Trek The Next Generation, or maybe even 3-part epic, set of episodes, much akin to The Best of Both Worlds, which is said to be the best, couple hours of television in Star Trek history for a lot of people, being very compelling. This story actually calls back upon that in a very fascinating way, in how it puts under the microscope why Jean-Luc Picard might be reluctant to create a sort of partnership, a cooperative effort between the Federation and the Borg once this, deal-making goes dirty between the Borg and the Cybermen, respectively. The Cybermen are a force to be reckoned with, and it does seem as though they're very much the leader in dominance, that idea of who can control the universe more, or more effectively, more dangerously, more maliciously, and all these kinds of things. The Cybermen have a leg up on the Borg, and the Borg kind of come calling, and it's the Doctor being a voice of reason to a point, to speak to Picard, that this is something we need to do. We need to work in a cooperative effort with the Borg if there's any hope of quelling the dangers that the Cybermen now represent within this universe. Something that very interpersonally relates to Riker's own past at one key point in the story, because the Borg, sort of representative that is meant to be communal with them in this effort, is somebody that goes back to Riker's past on the Potemkin. This was another element of Star Trek The Next Generation that had an entire episode, the title of which I don't remember off the top of my head, but was, calling into question Riker's loyalties and his decision-making, and, finding out about things that were covert in the history of the Federation to that point. So it's something that's very rubbing him the wrong way. And when you have the two leads of the Enterprise, the two command officers, both having their reservations, well, how can this, conceivably go forward? And it's very interesting how it does, as it ramps up to the finale, which involves some time travel on the Doctor's part. There's some time travel involved in convincing Picard to play along with the Borg for a time, and calls back to a time when the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker, actually had an encounter with Kirk and crew from the NCC 1701 original series Enterprise, and I know there was like a fan fiction short story or something along those lines. I don't know if this is paying homage to that or sort of loosely spinning out from that. It was a compelling read. Having that vibe and that mixture of it being very much set within the confines of a Star Trek The Next Generation episode, but having that flair of, especially, like I say, Series 5 of Doctor Who, that sort of equivalent with the Matt Smith 11th Doctor, Amy and Rory, the sort of banter between them and everything, it just felt very well mixed together. And it was a thoroughly enjoyable, combustible read, because I was just flying off the walls. Like, I literally read through both of these volumes one night after the other, in like maybe an hour and a half, if that, for each volume. I just rifled through it. I read them all a second time as well before this video because I just enjoyed it that much. The smallest gripe I might have about these particular volumes is the art. There's some inconsistency with the actual art. It's done very much in this portraiture sort of style, as you can see. And here you have perfect examples of Jonathan Frakes' likeness as Commander Riker. Of course, Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. But if you look at this face, this is supposed to be Matt Smith. And I actually made the assumption, looking at it very quickly, before realizing there was bow tie. I thought this might be sort of a poor representation of Arthur Darvill. Sorry, Cat, but the nose, it was like big nose here. And you can kind of vaguely see Karen Gillan and this Amy Pond. These are just brief examples that unfortunately are spilled all the way through from one set of pages with just amazing likenesses and the look and feel of Star Trek The Next Generation to instances where those likenesses really start getting called into question. Just how much are they really resembling the actors? And then even further transitioning into a more comic booky style, reminiscent of the then currently publishing Star Trek The Original Series comics, and of course featuring a guest appearance by the Fourth Doctor himself, Tom Baker. And yet still do these two universes feel well fitted together in a penultimately intriguing story. All in all, I enjoyed the hell out of this. This is the marriage of my two favorite fandoms, Doctor Who and Star Trek respectively, and it was just a frickin' blast. Seeing the TARDIS on board the Enterprise D, it was like a marriage made in heaven, and I couldn't have enjoyed it more. Even with the gripes that I had about the art, it was a blast and a hell of a time reading through these, and probably going to actually give them another read through now. So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you're interested in checking this out, if you haven't already, and if you have, whether you had the same kind of issues I had with it, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, let me know in the comments below as always, and otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.